Hello you gorgeous people out there, and welcome back to another video on the Rocket Shop. My name is Philip, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about SpaceX's super heavy problem. SpaceX has really been ramping up the work down there in Boca Chica over the course of the past weeks. A new tank farm is emerging from the Texan ground, together with some more ground support equipment and the orbital launch table, of course. SpaceX is indeed trying to prepare to send their first Starship into space, judging by the amount of progress they made in the last weeks. On the vehicular side, it seems like the production of Raptor engines has sped up rapidly, with one engine being transported to the build site almost every few days now. And additionally, our NASA Spaceflight community agents Jack and Mary, thank you for your gorgeous work on this point, have spotted a rather interesting object in one of the tents, seemingly a barrel section of the first orbital Starship, which is currently equipped with a heat shield needed for re-entry. It's also really interesting to see this white paste under the heat shield tiles, because we have never seen assembly of heat shields before. Yeah, it's interesting view there. Do you guys remember my video from a few weeks ago, in which I talked about when exactly Starship will go orbital? Well, in case you haven't, I'll link that one right now. In this older video, I talked about 4 major objectives SpaceX has to accomplish to make the Starship go orbital this year, which is officially stated by Elon their goal. So those 4 objectives were an orbital Starship iteration, more Raptor engines, and a launch facility, and all 3 of them have been fulfilled or are already in work by now. But if you paid a little bit of attention to what I just said, you probably noticed me just listing 3 objectives despite having said there were 4 in a sentence before that. That was on purpose. Well, the 4th and last objective is the super heavy booster. Obviously, SpaceX needs one to go to orbit at all, and they want it at the end of this year. But there's the problem, because SpaceX hasn't finished a single booster or tested one by now, and a few design issues around the Super Heavy still seem to be in discussion. With that given, there's only around half a year left for development and testing of the Super Heavy. But that test campaign around Super Heavy could in fact start soon. Currently, the vehicle in focus is clearly Starship SN11, which is expected to perform another 10-kilometer flight as early as next week. But what comes after SN11? Most of us likely expected SN15 to be the next article, but it seems more unlikely from day to day. SN15 is currently located in the mid-bay and is not even fully stacked. During the past months, SpaceX always had one finished prototype on the launch pad and another one waiting in the high bay, but SN15 is far from being finished. It seems like there isn't even a nose cone for that prototype. The one we previously thought to be SN15's cone doesn't even have a header tank and lacks a tip. Additionally, it has conducted some rather strange movement in the past weeks, which leads to me believing that this nose cone isn't purposed for SN15, meaning it can't go to launch site for probably more than a month. But what else will then be tested next? Well, look at this. This is the first super heavy prototype, dubbed the BN1, which is currently undergoing its final stacking operations in the high bay. The very first prototype will be a lot less complex than the later versions of the booster, more of a flying steel tube than a rocket's first stage. Back in 2020, Elon stated that BN1 is supposed to perform a 150-meter hop, just like Starship SN5 and SN6, but with only 2 engines. Looking at the thrust pack of BN1, the number of 4 Raptors seems more likely, given that this thrust pack is equipped with 4 attachment points for engines arranged in a perfect square. We haven't seen any grid fins yet, just a small piece of metal that appears to be the tip of one of the grid fins, but the community isn't quite sure about that. There are many speculations. So that means BN1 won't have any grid fins or other aerodynamic surfaces at all, because, well, why should it? You don't need something like grid fins for 150-meter hop. I mean, a grain silo with a single engine can do one, so why? But there is a problem. BN1 will be most likely finished and tested in less than a month from now on. And there is another prototype being worked on currently, the BN2. Already a few months ago, the forward dome of BN2 has been spotted, along with a second super heavy thrust dome, likely production Pathfinder item. But both parts differ a lot from what BN1 looks like. The thrust dome seems to host a total of 20 engine attachment points instead of 4 like on BN1, and the BN2 forward dome is outfitted with a weird octagonal structure at the top, which isn't part of BN1's forward dome. This structure may be part of the connection adapter that will one day connect the starships and super heavies when they are fully stacked. So you may ask yourself, where's the problem? Well, that is already it for super heavy test articles. BN1 will most likely only perform one flight, and BN2 is way too incomplete to state whether it's able to go to orbit or not, with the latter being expected. The current progress leaves just a bit more than a half of a year left to build at least two prototypes, test them, and build another one and send this one to orbit. And that's a huge problem for SpaceX. They will run into some serious time issues soon if they want to get to orbit in 2021. It's doable, of course, but only if everything goes after plan. But Super Heavy introduces a world's first of its kind vehicle that will cause a lot of trouble, for sure. The power of 28 Raptor engines is so enormous that it surpasses the values of any other rocket ever flown, leaving SpaceX with no knowledge at all about the engineering required to handle such an amount of force. And don't forget the re-entry profile, which differs a lot from the entry profile of Falcon boosters, and of course the ridiculous landing by being catch out of the air with the launch tower crane. Well, at least this one is being worked on right now. They're looking for some guy to program the launch tower, but we are far away from that at the moment. There's still a lot to do for SpaceX if they want their Super Heavy to be ready by the end of this year. Currently, they are just running out of time, especially if something doesn't go after plan, which is likely going to happen due to Super Heavy's really ambitious design. And it happened with Starship as well, so I'm kinda expecting not everything to go after plan. But knowing SpaceX, they'll just quadruple their production speed from one day to the other and just surprise us another time and fix their super heavy problem. Therefore, the next 6 months are going to be pretty interesting, full of tests and hopefully successes, leading the way to the first orbital super heavy booster. Otherwise, we'll see an orbital flight next year, not this one. And that's already it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did so, why don't leave a like and become a subscriber, which would help me a lot. That's it for me for today. I'm out. Cheers.